This is Andrian.
And this is Ray. Welcome to the Talk Live podcast.
Every 2 weeks, we'll invite a new guest and
In every session, we'll dig into their life, relationships, and perspectives.
one question at a time.
Let's talk live!
Yay. Welcome to the Talk Live podcast. This is Andrian.
This is Ray.
So this time, we're going to talk about personal branding. And basically, we're going to talk about what is personal branding in the first episode. And on the second episode, we're going to talk about how we can achieve it. And why is there an importance for us to do it and how to start? So what is personal branding, right? We said we're going to go through like a definition and stuff, right?
Yeah, I think before going through the definition of personal branding, maybe some high-level structure on top of what Andrew has just shared. So first we have to define what personal branding is, because I think different people have different sort of definitions of personal branding. So we're going to get that out of the way. But I think hopefully we want to give an idea that, okay, and also share some perspective of both Andrian and myself on how our personal branding has shifted, you know, when we're younger, up to when in university to work. So we're going to touch a bit on those. So yeah, and I think this episode is it's quite, what is it called, limited edition, right? Because it's just Andrian and I, so it's going to be more onto our perspectives, bouncing ideas off each other, because it's good to know a bit more
About each other, yeah.
So touching on personal branding, so I think a textbook definition of personal branding, there's really a lot of different definitions out there, but the one that we're sticking to for today is basically personal brand is really to establish a reputation for yourself and a presence of yourself outside of your job or your organization that you work. And I think this is important because I think a lot of people think when they think about someone, they actually associate with what kind of job you do, what kind of work. And that makes sense, right? Because you spend around 70, 80% of your life or your time at work, right? So I think this episode or this segment, we really want to touch on the more personal side of things that, okay, there are a lot more to outside of personal branding for your work. I mean, there could be a big aspect out of it. Yeah. So I think a simpler definition would be personal brand is really, how people define you, what the public sees you, right?
To perceive you. Yeah. And we're going to talk more about our point of view on what we just said on the definition and stuff. But there is a myth, right? There's a myth on personal branding that I've not heard of, that Ray just pull it out from the internet.
No, I mean it's a myth, and I can resonate to this, right? Because I'm in the tech industry, and in tech a lot of people think that you need to have really, really great personal brand, right, in order to sell more or connect more with customers or your partners. So there's a big industry around this whole personal branding, right? There's personal branding coaches, digital marketing coaches on how to build that online presence. So the myth was personal branding is actually a lot of effort. It's something that requires a lot of hard work to build it. Yes, that's true, but honestly, there's actually no formal process, right? Yeah. And I think we touch upon it that actually every day, the way that we present ourselves, it's already part of personal branding,
personal
right?
branding. But what's the myth though? We still haven't talked about what's the myth.
Yeah, the myth is basically personal branding is hard. It requires a lot of effort. It requires additional investment to get a coach so that you can have that very perfect personal branding that you think is suitable for yourself. So that's a myth, that you need a lot of effort.
And there's a formal process.
Yep.
Right? But what I've, in the briefing that we had with Ray, is that I know there are personal branding coaches to let you know how to portray your best self, or to how you can be well liked, or how you can basically improve yourself. I think it's basically how you can be a KOL among your friends and whatever of sort, how to be famous in a way, or how to define yourself more. And I don't think it's something that a coach would be able to teach you. I think is an ever-growing process, as we've just spoken a tiny bit about, because I think it's something that you compartmentalized and you learn throughout what we experience. Even though I think a personal coach, like personal branding coach, would be able to give you advice, but it's basically how you can be well liked, but not necessarily be yourself. I guess it depends on how good the coach is, basically, right?
Yeah, and I I might be jumping off a tangent
Yeah.
too early. But I like the part that, people have a perception on what good personal brand is.
Yeah.
And you did mention like, okay, people have this mindset that, a good personal brand is like you have a very large social influence.
Yeah.
And you brought up the term KOL, right? Key opinion leader, influencers that are online, to, whether that have a large following. And then people associate like, they've made it in personal brand, right? But just touching on that, that's not the only way to define personal branding. And why I brought it up, because I think I was also discussing with a couple of people, including Andrian, that I think we live in a world that, we are biased to extroverts.
Yeah.
And we reward those extroverts because they have like a larger social influence. But let's say you're an introvert. I think we can touch a bit more later. On that side.
Yeah, we can talk more a bit about like how. No, actually not how. Is what is personal branding before we're jumping into like sort of the biases that we're gonna talk about, because we probably gonna talk about at the end of the episode. So stay tuned for that. So what we're gonna talk about next is whether you have a personal branding or not. Or basically, I think my perspective, I think personal branding is something that is very subjective, that is people portraying on you and you don't have much control about. So I always thought of Ray, if I'm just jumping in.
I think this part we can talk about, how we think about each other's personal brands and whether that's aligned to what we want to build on. And it's going to be very casual, very interesting to see what Andrian thinks and what I think about Andrian.
And you can see that we're on a couch, so we're like chilling, because Ray actually bought a new couch that he's showing off a tiny bit. That's on discount on HKTV Mall if you guys are sponsoring us. Okay, it's back to the point. So I think Ray, when I know him, I think he basically grew up quite a bit. When I knew him when we were in year one, I think he's a cool guy. He's very positive. He's always happy. That he's very sociable. He talks to everyone. Everyone knows him. Basically, whenever you talk to someone in like
they know.
uni,
I know Ray, right? Yeah,
I was saying like, I'm friends with Ray. Yeah, I know him too lah. The Malaysian, right? Long Zhao, right? Dragon Boat. So basically, everyone knows Ray, and he, from my perspective, he's a cool guy. He socializes with a lot of people, and he's positive. He's always happy, right? And I think that's the perspective I had of him, but as of late, I think he is more confined now. He refined himself, and he knows he doesn't need to socialize with everyone because he used to socialize with everyone. He doesn't say no. He never say no. I always think that he is a yes man. So anyone asks him anything, he would basically just say, okay lah, let's do something.
And maybe just ditch them, right?
Maybe. I don't know. You can talk about that part later. And you can say that if that's basically correct. And then I think more recently, I said the first point, which you're more refined, and you basically define yourself even more. And now you're more of a, how should I say, you're more workout guru. You're trying to build your part that you are more like a gymnast. And you also have various passion projects, including the Talk Lab podcast, to like improving, because that's what we really wanted to do, is just to improve people's life. And you really want to do that. You want to, and you were really enjoying, even though in uni, you're really enjoying being a certain ambassador as well, to influencing young adults on their lives and how they communicate with people or how they want to make life choices. And I think that's who I know of you. And you're also a great boyfriend, probably a soon great husband, and also a great father that I've known. Would be lucky to be your kid, and your wife. Wow. But I would say that I like him enough, and like his personal brand enough for us to hang out for the past 8 years.
It's been 8 years.
It's been 8 years. It's been a long way.
So I think just some quick comments. I think, yeah, wow, this is, it's getting into a really, really sentimental kind of a reflective kind of a podcast, which I like. Yeah, I've never really heard this side of Andrian saying about me, which I really appreciate. Yeah, so I think, yeah, I kind of agree with the different things it touches upon. Yeah, basically, you know, yeah, maybe to structure it more, right? Yeah, I think it evolved over time, like what I wanted and how I wanted people to look into me, and what I ultimately want to pursue or what makes me fulfilled. It changed along and across time, and even like this past 8 years, right? You can see. So maybe I share a bit more about what I reflect on whatever you said, and then before I jump back on and give my perspective on what I think about you on the personal branding note. Yeah. So I think in the beginning we did talk about like, okay, we wanted to touch on, you know, how it changed when I was younger or when we were younger to something growing up. So you picked up on the point where, you know, because you knew me when I was in university and I was already very sociable. That was not the case. I didn't just get there. I was pretty much an introvert when I was young. I know it's quite hard to imagine, but I think like I was intrinsically an introvert when I was young. Of course, inside I like want to like speak to different people, but I kept a lot of what I wanted inside of me. Yeah. So with my family, with my brothers and sisters, sometimes I don't express it too much. But I think my parents were very positive in a way that they always say, oh, you can open up. But it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
When you're young, you just sort of have your own mind and you don't open up. And then, yeah. So I think through watching different Western kind of drama, then you start liking, you know, music, and then you start seeing Taylor Swift and how that sort of impact you and like, you feel a certain way. Yeah, but I mean, that's maybe going off to a different tangent.
I like that part.
But I want to say, like, when I was young, I was pretty much introvert. And what made me really want to be, you know, the cool guy, like, oh, I want to be that guy that hangs out with a lot of girlfriends, etc. I don't want to just be with myself. And, you know, not to say that my friends are not cool and everything. I really treasure that. But I always have that perception that I wanted to be liked, well liked. And then I started to realize, like, okay, yeah, I go on to different exchanges. I think that really opened me up. I went to Australia in Melbourne for a summer program. And in that program, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to try something new. Not think so much about who I was in, you know, back in school, and really open up myself. I talked to different people. Even to girls, I was like, oh, I'm going to like just say like, oh, I like you and everything. And I did that. I said, I had a crush on you. And it turned out okay. Yeah. Like, yeah. So anyway, from that, then it made me feel like, oh my God.
But you cannot go anyway. What happened?
Anyway,
there?
that I mean, we just say, and then she appreciated, and then you felt like, oh, okay, it's not rejection, yeah. But then, okay, it's like really puppy's love back then, to be honest. But I would say like, yeah, it's a bit messy, but now I just give you an idea, like, okay, what made me comfortable to really open up to more people is through the summer school experience in Australia that really shaped me.
That's your eureka moment. How you turn into an introvert to an extrovert.
Yeah, I won't say really changing 180, but it's like something within me that was not unlocked. And that sort of unlocked, and then I started to feel like, oh, I could really relate to more people. And yeah. And of course, back then, it was still like, not to say like, you know, really changing 180, right? I'm still myself. It's just that like I'm more open. And then it built a long time. Yeah. And by the time when I went to Singapore, right? Because that was back then in Malaysia in a secondary school.
How old was that?
That summer school was when I was 16 years old. 16 years old, yeah.
Around the time that boys really shift, I would say. Growing up, basically. Yeah,
so in Singapore, I really honed on that, and then it served me well, right? Yeah, I met like different people because I also went to a international school in Singapore. So I met a lot of different kind of people, which now I think we still keep in touch, like a lot of good friends, good memories. And yeah, that set a good stage when I went to university in HKUST, and then whatever that Andrian just said, like post-university, pretty accurate. But I would say like it's a constant process of really updating what you want, and like what Andrian picked up on, like Ray first impression, think of Long Zhao, which is dragon boating, very fit and everything. Yeah, so that's pretty much your personal brand will be affected by what you do. And in university, I was very sporty. And that's why people would think like, oh, he's a buff guy, he's very sporty and everything. And that changes. And then now, like at work and everything, I think I sort of changed. Like, okay, I really, really want. I don't exactly know what I want, but I know that I have this intrinsic value that I really want to create an impact to young people.
Yeah.
And I think it makes sense, right? Like student ambassador, I really like the interaction with kids, and I think you enjoy that too, right? Especially if they're pretty or handsome or whatever. Yeah. We feel good if we can, recruit someone to HKUST. I don't like, we're pretty much like salespeople, right, for the university. Even though deep down inside we really like HKUST. It's a stressful place, but we like it. Yeah. So before me talking too much about that, yeah, I think that sort of changed along the way. And at work, I also want to be well liked, which, yeah, at the end of the day, like, you can't possibly get anyone to like you. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. And I learned it the hard way. Yeah.
I realize what I've said about Ray is I didn't talk about him of work. Like nothing related to work I've talked about. I didn't say that he's a great sales. I don't know if he's a great sales. I think he is. Hopefully he is. What else?
Enough to keep the job.
Yeah, enough to keep the job. And I didn't talk that he's a tech guy. I don't really think that he's really of a tech guy. He never was that great in IS of sort. But like IS is basically what we learn in uni. That is like IT of sort, like programming or whatever. But I'm actually happy because what we have just said is personal branding is something that is outside your work, and then didn't even mention a word about him or about him working in that environment. So I would be happy of that personal brand, right?
Yeah, I think there's no right or wrong. So now switching the gears to Andrian, right?
All right.
Yeah. I think I think there's different ways that we can do it, right? But I think maybe I'll go like instead of young to old. Okay, we're not that old yet, right? We're still young adults, right? Yeah. But maybe, yeah, today when I think about Andrian, yeah, I think it's very different perspective. Like I would think Andrian, like I would phrase it different because I know Andrian personally, so I have like different images of him. And at work, yeah. So basically, it's I can't help it. Yeah, every time when I meet someone, like I also will frame them their personal brand by their work. So it's sort of like what you mentioned is very different, right? Yeah. So for me, I would like, okay, Andrian is like a real estate expert, right? And not just for the capacity or for his professional work, right? Because why I link it is because like in his own personal life, right? He is very into property too, and all this personal finance. So that's personal finance, not really part of your work, but I felt like, okay, that's sort of your brand. You're very good at managing expenses, very good at managing your finances, and yeah, how to save up, how to get the best deals. And Andrian is also a technology expert to me. So every time when I want to have all these different new gadgets, I'll always seek his advice, and of course, where to get the best deals, 2-in-1, right? Yeah. So I think from a professional standpoint, really I think he is very capable, and not because I know what he does from a professional work. It's because I know him as a friend personally, and the way that he does his or treats his friend. Yeah, when he organizes dinners, organizes birthdays, you can tell it's very structured, and he executes well on it. So I felt like, okay, Andrian is a very well planned guy. And he also very safe. Yeah. So in terms of taking risks and everything, I think that sort of evolved. And now that the fact we're doing podcasts, something outside of, just getting money is more like for the greater good. I think that's something very, very meaningful that I think we connect more at a deeper level, especially when we got like we're working and everything, right? It's not all about, let's be in the same group project so that we get better grades, etc. I was never in the same group projects with Andrian because I always put on the grades. But yeah, you get the point. Yeah, I can see you that growth changes in the personal branding, and I know that you're still fine tuning what you want in life, and I'm still fine tuning that. But yeah, I'm glad that we're on this journey. And I kind of feel like, oh, this podcast is like, oh, me just talking to you, like I'm proposing to you. But I hope it's helpful for the audience or the audience out there or the young listeners out there to get a better understanding of our connection and how we see each other, you know, from university time to young adults to working, and now as a partnership running co-host on this Talk Loud podcast.
Yeah. Hopefully more items to come, but let me jump back on it because it's already 20 minutes.
That's fine, we can keep it rolling.
Yeah, we can keep it rolling. So I would say I would just answer what Ray said. I think a lot of them are his perspective, and I think a lot of them I would resonate as well on what he talked about me, which I really feel like this is a man that I'm really close with. And I would say how I developed this whole branding or where I am today is because of when we're younger, right? When we're younger, I think a lot of boys or dudes, they want to be popular, they want to be fun, they want to be interesting. But sometimes they don't pan out that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we also said something about extrovert and introvert. I always wanted to be an introvert. Sometimes I'm not, which I think a lot of people would think that I'm always happy. I'm always like just smiling. But sometimes you just have something that you're dealing with, that you're not happy. But you don't want people to think that you are unhappy because it would ruin your personal branding of sort. But then I've learned to realize that you need to express your feelings. Mm-hmm. You need to let people know that you are vulnerable, because I think personal branding is basically projecting your best self in a lot of ways, but it's not being who you are sometimes. And I think that's what I've learned, and what we in the briefing that we have had with Ray is that I would say Ray have a more defined profile on personal branding. You know who he is. If you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, you basically know Ray more than me, because he knows more people basically, because he's sociable even before this podcast, even before his work and during his work. So he built like a lot of connections. But I would say I'm fine tuning where I am and trying to figure it out how I can be my best self, but also be myself, because it's two different things. But if you can be two things together, it empowers you to know that you can be vulnerable, because I think I can be vulnerable probably amount a few people only, and hope everyone who's listening, you have more than a few that you can be vulnerable in front of. Because I think even though I'm like gibbering, babbering and spamming a lot of audience, but I think it's a process for you to grow in terms of growing up, that when we're younger, you want to be cool, you want to have a lot of friends. Sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes you just need to find a few that makes you happy, that makes you know that you define something, that you're worth it. Because it also helps you to have the self-satisfaction, to know that you're on the right path, and you don't. And a lot of times you feel judged, which I think I was, and I deservedly should be like judged in different ways. But after being judged, I realized maybe I'm not doing something that I'm projecting myself correctly. But I think something you always is a process for you to fine tuning. So at this stage, I would say that I have things that I really like to do. I like Formula One. I like tech stuff. I like personal finance, and I want to explore even more. I always want to learn. I'm starting to think that I should learn coding, learn Python, or some programming skills, and also to learn. I'm recently picking up how to drive, so I think I want to be more comfortable with myself, and I think you need to be comfortable with yourself before you can develop a personal brand. And I think a lot of people, I would say, I was thinking of this morning, a lot of people, they did further education, sometimes not because they need it, it's because for them to empower themselves, to let them feel more entitled for the next stage of life, right? So Ray, I talked so much.
No, I think those are really, really good points. And I think for people listening out, yeah, you really get to see the personal side of Andrian and not just know him as a person. You can really internalize it and think, how did that and what did Andrian say that actually help you and how it can help you out. And I mean, I'm really, really happy to be part of this journey. We have this platform. And yeah, it's not just to benefit the different listeners out there, right? Because at the same time, it's a two-way, right? We benefit from the perspective of our guests, their stories, and then it will also give an idea whether that is an aspect you want, or from each guest, what are some aspects that you want to take out? Yeah. But I since you shared some stuff, there was one part that I wanted to also add on. I actually envied you for one aspect where you're very good with girls. Yeah. So you had a lot of different experiences with different girls. Not to say that I'm not happy with my current fiance and everything, but there's that side of me that I've never really actually went through different types of people, but I internalized and felt that it was just a phase that I never had to try. Yeah. So that part, like, I felt like, well, especially to a lot of guys or girls, in fact, like being single back then, and then you meet a lot of different people. So that's something that I felt like, that's something I admired about you and how you went through that whole journey and eventually, really finding who you really want as a person and what you value about them. So I see that growth. It's pretty amazing.
Wow, we're gonna jump into that. I was trying to avoid that topic, but I think it's a double-edged sword. People think that because this is a part
like
of,
you mentioned, like how you were judged, right? So I'm guessing you're referring to that, right? That's why I'm like
a bit of that. Yeah, people would think that you are just you like girls and you like hang out with them, and you would be judged because of that. But I would say a lot of the parts is because you used to don't know where you want or where you want to be, but after having various relationships, you know what fits you and how you fit them, and also how it helps you as a person to understand yourself even more. Because I think a lot of them are self-actualization. You realizing who you are and how you can be yourself in front of your partner. And I think it's always a learning process, even though I envy you too, because you already found the one that you want, the one that you need, and they get go. You had Betsy, and sometimes I envy you for you don't need that process to be judged or to find or to define who you need. And that's right there. So I think it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and just to the young listeners or young audience out there, every time when people ask me like, "Oh, wouldn't you want?" I feel like this personal branding is segmenting to relationship. But just to close it off with this point, right? When people ask me like, "Oh, Ray, how come you decided to settle on this one person so young? Have you ever thought about meeting different people or messing around a bit?" Yeah, obviously that always hit me because I never had the chance. But of course, before I met Betsy, right, like I already started to try out with different people, and obviously it didn't work out. If not, why I'm not with them, right? But I think my advice is like there's no right way of finding someone that matches you. At the end of the day, it takes a lot of effort, but I think that's a no-brainer, right? You need to put in effort to a relationship, but sometimes you need to really think about and follow that intuition sometimes. A lot of people ask me, "Oh, why? You need to meet different people." It's like, no, but when there's that intuition that you feel like this is the kind of relationship, that kind of life that you can picture of that person, I think don't fight that intuition. And whatever happens to that relationship, you fight it through. Right? You make effort. When the other person say they want to break up, which is not a good sign, it's not a healthy thing to bring up to a relationship, right? Unless you really feel like you really want to end it, and for valid reasons, not for childish reasons. Yeah, then you fight it. you do whatever means because you see a life with them and you follow your intuition, and whether that person resonates with that, if they do, then you build piece by piece.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I think a lot of people would think that relationship, even though we segmenting personal, I think relationship is a part of personal branding. I think some people would think that, oh my God, the relationship, it has to be perfect. Everything has to fall into the right pieces. I would definitely be amazingly happy and enjoy every moment. But it's not that. I don't think is that. And originally we want to start this podcast, I wouldn't talk about a lot of them, we'd be talking about relationships, because I think relationships, we have a lot of learnings. And I have learned a lot.
Yeah, especially Andrian.
And I'm judged because of it. But you just want to basically, I think everyone just want to settle down and find the right person and just to live a happy life. And you don't want to go through all that bullshit. You want to go through all that annoying stuff that you need to go through. And it is not a personal branding that you want to define yourself with sometimes.
Yeah,
mostly.
Okay. So I think just closing off on the relationship topic,
part,
right? Yeah. So I think we can. Yeah. If you have any guests or like people that you think would have a lot of experience on that, DM us, reach out to us. Like, we're very happy to reach out. Well, like, it could be sex education, they have a lot of experience in there, or it could be like they have a lot of experience with different guys, different girls, and they're still finding themselves. We're open to have a chat with them. But just closing that relationship piece, and like what Andrian said, your relationship and how well you are and how well you handle that relationship adds somehow to your personal branding. Because a big part of human beings, we're like social beings, and how we judge other people, judge is a very negative word. How we view other people is based on how they treat their girlfriends, their spouse, their family, right? So just closing on that point, I think I picked up on the point where you said like you were intrinsically like you want to be an introvert, right? So I think like going on to that topic of introverts and how, if let's say you are an introvert, right? It's not the end of the world. I mean, the world is like biased to extroverts, but if you're an introvert, that's fine. You embrace you, right? But it's not to say that you won't have really good personal branding, because I think, just to give an example, right? I presume some of us are working, or let's say you're not working yet, you're working, you're in a school or a university setting. You would know, like, let's say, who's really good at coding, or who's really good at a specific task, right? Normally it's a technical task or like a subject matter expert in a specific area. You reach out to that person directly. And sometimes that person could be an extrovert or they could be an introvert. But if let's say they're introvert, you already have that view on them that they're really good at that. And they may not like socializing so much. They don't like being out there with so many people, but you know that they're good at that. And you find them for that task. So really work on the strengths that you think that you can add value and put on the table. And that sort of becomes your personal branding.
Yeah, I think we were talking about like extrovert is definitely more popular in terms of personal branding, but being an introvert is not the end of the world. You can be introvert as what I have said is you don't need to have like 600 friends, even though you have 600 friends on Facebook, probably at least. They are not really your friends. They are just people who are on your Facebook
acquaintances.
Yeah.
Right.
But then what you need is just your comfort zone, or the people that are in your trust circle, and that's basically who you need if you're an introvert, and you can have other items to define you as a person. And that's basically our view on personal branding, on what is personal branding. And the next episode, we're going to talk about how you can achieve that. So stay tuned for that, because we have other learnings as well.
Yeah, so I think just to give like a 15 to 20 second teaser on what we're going to cover next, we're going to cover more on, how you differentiate your personal brand with your professional brand, how to manage it offline and online, and what are some of our experiences on that we're going to share.
Yeah. So if you like our episode, comment, like, subscribe, and share. Remember to share it, because you sharing is very important to spread our theme, spread the words, and to inspire even more people to get impacted and get positively influenced. So thank you very much again for listening to this 30 minutes podcast. Hopefully you got something out of it. Thank you very much. This is Andrian.
This is Ray.
Bye.
Bye-bye.